Oh,
Okay.
cool.
Christmas,
Merry
man.
Christmas,
Merry
man.
Christmas.
What's going
Yeah.
on?
Hey, what's up? Merry Christmas,
Okay,
man. Y'all come on
Christmas.
in.
Yeah.
All right,
What's
all right,
going on,
man.
man?
Welcome to the recital, man.
You know?
Merry Christmas. It's
What's
another
up?
year, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right, everybody got their music?
Hey, yeah.
All right, pass it out, pass it around. All right. All right, y'all ready? Yeah, man. 1, 2, 3, 4. Lick my balls with lots of
Loud and
saliva.
restart.
La 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 la. 'Tis the season to suck a drunk driver. La 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 la. Out of style with gangster apparel. La 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 la. Stroll through the hood with a loaded double barrel. La 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 la. Blazing blunts in a beat up Taurus. La 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 la. Baby gangsters selling dope for us. La 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 la. Digital scale to weigh and measure. La 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 la. Getting over on the system brings me pleasure. La 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 la. High as hell with dark sunglasses. La 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 la. Flunking all my stupid ass classes. La 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 la. Me and my homies kick it together. La 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 la. Drunk and high in real cold weather. La 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 la.
Okay, well, apparently that was the entire song, although um, it did have like 30 seconds left on it. But that was "Deck My Balls" by the Afro Man. You know, a true artist of our generation. Speaks pretty much the way for everybody that I know in my generation. I think you guys are the same age as me. Is that correct, Adrian? Does that kind of Adrian Lloyd is here, and we have Arjun. What does that song mean for you?
It did have like 30 seconds left on it.
Oh, hold on. I don't think that they heard me. So, sorry, guys. What did that song mean for you, being as it is a song that really speaks to our generation of people on Christmas? "Deck My Balls" by Afro Man.
Well, it tells me that we love stupid shit. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I was kind of underwhelmed by it. I thought he was going to do something like really, you know, at least have its own original backbeat or something. But yeah, it was just a Deck the Halls parody.
Hey, it was still pretty good. You know, I can't complain too much. It was funny, but it just tells me that we like stupid parodies, I guess.
So I guess Merry Christmas to all of the people who are. Let me see. I don't think people can see you guys, but and you're not on camera anyway. But Merry Christmas to all the viewers out there. The few of you that are not watching, you know, probably, you know, It's a Wonderful Life, where the Lakers are on, and of course there's also Die Hard. So Adrian, what did you end up doing with your day, seeing as it is Christmas and you've said before that you are an atheist?
Well, I end up spending pretty much my entire day with family, which is what I do every single year. For me, Christmas, I've pretty much compared it, it's almost like Thanksgivings, another Thanksgivings for me. It's just a time for me to reflect on what my family and friends do for me, what I do for them, and be thankful to them for that. So that's what Christmas means to me.
Yes,
But I was at... I was just going to add in, yeah, I was at breakfast with my family, over to see the in-laws, and then out to dinner with my family again.
Yeah, so we also have Arjun, who happens to be from India, who's not Christian either. He's Hindu. So we have three people who are not Christian talking about their Christmases. So, Arjun, what'd you end up doing for Christmas?
Like I'm in the middle of like moving house, so basically I just did that, and I played a bit of PlayStation.
So he actually did something. I mean, he did more than I did today. I did. I think I wrote 2 articles, and that's about it. So, and I swept the room and stuff like that. I think I might be even less productive on Christmas than I am on most of the other holidays that I don't celebrate.
Oh, that's
So,
like
Well, when
interesting.
none of the stores are open, what the hell else are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
the thing is that um, I think that there's a lot of anxiety going on around the world. So I guess it's good that I have a few days off. But the economy seems to be kind of falling apart here in the U.S. and people are trying to decide who's to blame, whether it's of course Trump or the Fed or I guess the Jews or something. Some people are, people are kind of just trying to decide who's to blame, and at least there's a couple days off from that, I guess. Are you guys worried about like some big economic collapse that's about to happen? Because I see a lot of signs of it.
I've been wondering about that myself because there's been a fair amount of people that are starting to bring out the warnings for the early warning systems for it. So I think it's inevitable. I mean, I've heard that we're overdue too for an economic collapse. I'm not expecting something like another 2008 or anything like that, but I do think that a recession is just around the corner.
Yeah, I've been hearing rumors that it might even be worse than 2008.
Oh, you actually think it's going to be a big recession? I thought it'd be just like another one, like sort of a smaller one that takes a year or two. You push through it, and then everything would be okay. I wasn't even considering something like 2008 or worse.
Well, the issue that is some are saying is going to drive the recession is the Fed, and part of the reason for that is because of the student loan crisis, which some say is a worse situation than the housing crisis that precipitated the 2007 to 2008 crash. And it's kind of like I don't think that the politicians were ever intending to actually reform our financial system after that, and they're probably going to try to sweep all the dirt under the rug this time too. What about you, Arjun? Is there like a lot of anxiety over there in India about some sort of big worldwide recession?
Uh, Not really, because see, recessions don't affect India, because I'll tell you why. Because Indians in general have a habit of like having huge savings. Indians on average they save anywhere between 40 to 45% of their income, monthly income. So, Indians have never had a problem with recession. So, like, even if there is an economic recession, the savings are so much that like people can coast through that. But on the other hand, see, on the about the economic recession, like there are too many people living on money that they don't have, right? Like somebody told me this mind-boggling statistic that Americans on average have 13 credit cards, which is like a mind-boggling thing, because in India people don't have that many credit cards because they can have that if they choose to, but they don't, because here people don't really like to live on credit. Like it's frowned upon in society that you're living on credit. So but that's a thing that works in our favor. But like, see, if we look to the Western world, there are too many people living on credit and not focusing on savings. So like if recessions, when they come, they hit you guys harder. So yeah, that's my perspective on it.
That's one
Yeah,
of the reasons I've tried to keep my credit limit as low as possible, so that way, if I do use my credit card, I won't be caught with thousands upon thousands of dollars in debt because of it. But I also find it's sort of the way that our banking system is set up is just ridiculous. Because a few years ago, when I was at a meeting with my financial advisor at the bank, I didn't have a credit card at that time, and I ended up bringing like that whole time I just lived off my debit card and everything. And I ended up asking him about my credit score, and I said, do I really need a credit card in order to have a good credit score. It just seems a little ridiculous to have one if I don't need one. And he pretty much told me, yeah, it's like if you want it, you have to have a credit card and pay off what you owe on it. Like you have other things such as your bills, but your credit card is your big one that they tend to look at. And it seems like it's just a system that's kind of rigged in that way. Because from my perspective, if I can live my life, not have a credit card, that means I never have to really borrow money. It should look better on me. But they were pretty much telling me if I want to take out a loan or something, it's not going to look very good if you never have a credit card. So system seems a little rigged that way against people in the Western world. But, if you're going to have 13 credit cards, you're kind of just doing yourself a disservice.
No, I'll tell you something. That's true across the world. That's why in India, what people do is they have one, maybe at max two credit cards, just to show that they have a credit score, and the rest of the time they're basically living off either transfers or checks or debit cards or cash. In India, cash is a huge thing. So of late we've transferred to digital payments, but the cash used to be a huge thing. So there are ways around that. Like if you just have one or two credit cards and use it off and on, the bank has to give you a high credit score because you're generally paying off your debt. So yeah, there are ways around that.
Yeah, I think that there's a general change that happened in the U.S. back in the 70s. I remember hearing about it, that people used to think exactly like Arjun is saying people in India do still to this day, that living and using credit cards is to a certain extent it's even beyond problematic. It's immoral because they were saying, well, it's basically living on living on borrowed credit, etc. So there was kind of a cultural shift during that era because a lot of these credit card companies like American Express started to just glamorize the idea of having credit cards, and that's how really the credit card culture started, and the points and whatever. So I think it's interesting, Arjun saying that the cultural attitude in India towards credit is much different than from here.
Yeah, see, the cultural attitude is a big part of it, right? But more than that, it is the attitude of savings. India has gone through a period of great poverty, which many of the Western countries haven't seen in a while. So generation after generation, have when they have seen hardships, what they have done is that they have inculcated this habit of scrimping and scrounging, right? From in the lower classes, in the lower middle class, the people are really up and about on saving. Even in the upper middle class, people are up on saving. Even though sometimes you will just see people saving just for the heck of it. People will not, there won't be any reason to it why they're saving, but they're still saving. So it's like an automatic, it's like a reflex action. So because during the 2008 crisis, the rest of the world got hit. Even China got hit, but India didn't get hit because of this attitude of saving. Plus, also there is also this this thing about working at bare minimum operation cost for small businesses, where Indians have this ability to sort of operate businesses at the bare bone sort of expense, operation expense. And that basically, these small businesses across India, they saved the Indian economy.
So we have in the chat, by the way, Chris and S Fresh. I don't know who S Fresh is, but he says Jews rules. I guess he's eating Chinese food today or something. So let me ask Arjun. What's happening right now with American culture, all this SJW stuff, there's a media meltdown literally every day. Certain things like that also happen in Canada. Do you think that people in South Asia are kind of losing faith or losing confidence in Western values, and they're trying to? I mean, does that motivate some of the Hindutva movement that you're seeing in India, where they're looking more at the internal values as opposed to the values of other countries like us?
No, Hindutva is it's a reaffirmation of Hindu values after not after like say a century. It is after more than 1,000 years that Hindus are reaffirming their faith, right? Because what ended up happening was like we were like enslaved by the Muslims first for about 800 to 900 years, and then the British for another 300 years. Like we were like picked up, sold as slaves across the world, like stuff like that, basically. So after that, after we got our independence from the British, what ended up happening was we were taken over by the communists, basically the communist mindset, because our first prime minister was a socialist, and then subsequently many of the prime ministers were also socialists, right? They hailed from socialist parties. So a very socialist mindset began to set in, and like that liberal culture, non-believing stuff like that. That Hinduism is bad. Oh, it is such a this thing, that thing. So, like basically, Hindutva is a reply to more than 1,000 years of external thought being pushed on Indian people. So it is less to do with people losing faith in, say, modern Western values. It is more to do with a historical pushback. It's like that.
All right, so I think like really I'm starting to actually maybe I'm just like expressing my own anxiety at Western culture right now because I watch Paul Joseph Watson. I'm sure Adrian does too.
Yep.
And Adrian, you live in Canada where free speech laws are much less protective of free speech than here. I want to ask you. So we're dealing with a lot of conflicts in terms of culture right now that are peripheral to the whole debate over borders and Donald Trump and nationalism and everything. And do you think that there's a real Canadian identity that's going to assert itself? Because obviously, there's the division between, Quebec and the rest of Canada. There's also issues all along the, there's the indigenous rights issues and stuff like that. So is your country, do you feel it's coming apart the way that many people are thinking that it's happening in America?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between Canada and America, so a lot of times we face through the same thing. Things such as like the problems between Quebec and the rest of Canada and the indigenous rights in Canada, those have always kind of been there. But you brought up, you mentioned that you said, is there like a Canadian identity that's starting to express itself? Definitely now. I would say 2018 was really sort of a wake-up call for a lot of people. Just as we sort of saw the way our government's been going around, has been conducting itself since 2015. A lot of people have been unhappy with the way that it's been going. And I think that there were a number of key protests that took place in Canada that really started to wake people up. And key events, like one for me that I think I started to feel the shift in Canadian attitude actually took place very recently, which was I know Trump pulled out of this a while ago, but it was the Global Compact for Migration. And right now, there was a poll that was done, and about 80% or more of Canadians were not happy with the current level of immigration and significantly opposed more of them. And they also, so that was actually, sorry, that's a separate poll. But the poll I was talking about is that the popularity for the Global Compact for Migration was extremely low. Most Canadians didn't want that signed, but our government went ahead and signed that anyway. So a lot of, that's just one event. And then we have a bunch of, we've been watching as sort of like our 2018 budget that was put out was, by all sense of it, it was a socialist budget. There was about 300 or more mentions to gender in this 2018 budget, and there was very little when it came to actual application of stuff such as infrastructure, which infrastructure was a big one that was promised in the 2015 election. So as people are starting to take notice of this, the average Canadian is starting to strike back against the government and a lot of this politically correct left-wing ideology that's present out there. The only problem that I see is we may be too far gone that in order to fix this problem is that it's been something that's been in our culture since you probably could trace this all the way back to our current prime minister's father, Elliott Trudeau, who was he himself was pretty much on the same side as the Marxists, the communists. Them, in fact, he actually was very friendly to the Soviet Union. He was the first Western leader to open up relations to communist China when a lot of Western nations wouldn't even really recognize them as a legitimate government. And ever since then, we've been going down this path. So right now, there is a politician in Canada called Maxime Bernier, and he started up a few months ago. He started up the People's Party of Canada, and this has been pretty much going along the same lines of populism that we've been seeing taking storm all across the world. So sort of like the sort of parties that we see in Italy, Hungary, Poland, America. He's that sort of politician. The only problem that he has right now is he only got himself started a few months ago, and he has yet to really establish himself in the rest of Canada. So we're less than a year away now from election time, which means that it's very unlikely that he's going to be able to put himself in a position to actually get elected by the next year. In fact, at least up here, it's taken an average of about 5 years from when a party gets started to when they finally achieve power. And so if that ends up happening, we're going to go down the same route. One of the reasons that he ended up he's, at least among sort of conservative base, he became so popular very quickly is because a lot of even our conservative politicians aren't very trustworthy. The leader of the Conservative Party, like, he tries to brand himself as different than Justin Trudeau, the head of the Liberal Party, who's our prime minister. Yet he's still okay with signing on to the Paris Climate Accord. He wants to be part of the UN. So even if we change colors, we change political parties, we're still in the same position where our politicians are still selling us down the river. So there are Canadians that are waking up, but it may be just a case of too little, too late, unfortunately.
Yeah, so like one thing about Maxime Bernier is like he may play a more important role than one may think, like as of now, because he may not be like a candidate for prime minister, but what he can do is like decide the fortunes of who will be the next prime minister. Something like what has happened now in Sweden, like with the Swedish Democrats, right? With the center-right alliance getting only one seat less than the center-left alliance, and Swedish Democrats are now are basically playing the kingmaker. Like they have this number of seats to put any one party into power. So like we can find Maxime Bernier in that kind of situation. Like if neither party gets majority in parliament, neither the Liberals nor the Conservatives, and Maxime Bernier has the number of seats to put one of these parties into power, I think like Maxime Bernier can be in a coalition with I can see a coalition happening with Andrew Scheer.
They probably would if it came down to that. It would just be, it's interesting whether that'll be the case or not, because again, he was part of the Conservative Party before he ended up breaking off, because he was getting very pissed off with the way that they were conducting himself. Like they pretty much admitted that they were going away from being a right-wing party to a centrist party. I think he would probably align with them, and in doing so, he would give himself more of an advantage, because if they're trying to push for policies that he wouldn't support, all he has to do is he has to pull his support from the coalition, and then we're pretty much they're stuck with a minority government that the rest of Parliament can overrule them, or that may even force an early term election if there's a vote of no confidence that's called against them. So it's a possibility, and I think that's probably the most likely one right now. But I will say that in just 3 months, he put together 338 ridings across Canada in 3 months. Him and his group of people working with him put together all 338 candidates. So he can run a candidate in absolutely every riding now, which is pretty impressive. So we'll see what comes out of this. It's just right now he's still polling pretty low. He's only at about like 2 or 3% of the popular vote. So, but we still have a year left for him to brand himself. but he's talking about problems such as extreme multiculturalism. He does bring up the immigration issue, because right now we're sitting at like 300 to 350,000 every year, which is, it's a lot when you take in consideration how small our population is and also where the people are coming from. The only thing is he doesn't really do much to change this. I think he still wants to bring in at least 250,000 every year. But it'll be interesting to see where this goes in election time. But whether you support the People's Party of Canada or not, you can see that there's a lot of just average Canadians that are starting to fight back against the political establishment that's here.
Yeah, I wanted to say that in the chat we have a guy, S Fresh, who is apparently he's Quebecois, and he's representing, and he says that basically Trudeau staged a bunch of bombings in the 50s, in the 60s, the FLQ, in order to foil the separatist movement. So it's pretty. I was trying to get him on. He says he's working on Christmas. That sucks for you, man. Sorry. But he says Quebecers have been fighting against this bullshit since the 50s, and we're always demonized and shit on by the rest of Canada. I'm glad they are waking up. What do you have to say to that, Adrian? Are Quebecers shit on by the rest of Canada?
That's a complicated situation. Like, yes, it is, but you also kind of have to look at the way that Quebec can conduct itself, because Quebec kind of wants the special treatment. For instance, like they want to be recognized as a nation inside of a nation. They also take a lot of the equalization payments that are usually paid off through Alberta, but then at the same time, they're going to block any single pipeline that comes from Alberta, which is the source of Alberta's profits. The oil industry there employs a lot of people. So yes, he's right when he talks about like a lot of Canada shits on Quebec, but I'm also going to argue that Quebec kind of brings it on itself a lot. There are some unwarranted things too. Like I've given credit before, and I said, like, I do understand that Quebec's culture is like their language and culture is slowly getting eroded. And a lot of people that come, like English speakers that go over to French, don't really make much of an effort in order to speak French. But I've also noticed, even because I'm bilingual, I've also noticed that a lot of Quebecers, like Francophones, if they even detect a hint of an Anglophone accent, a lot of times they switch to English. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword with that. So he's got a point, but there's more to it than just that. I don't think it's just Quebec is the victim. I think they've done a lot to sort of bring it upon themselves.
So what we're really talking about here is an issue where there's two different kind of ethnic tendencies in Canada, but they're both dealing with a lot of the same postmodernist bullcrap and self-esteem issues that the left has brought onto Canada. And in fact, S. Fresh said that, in Canada, right wing means center left. So, of course we have Larry here, by the way. I can't not mention him. But I think I'm seeing a lot more participation around Canada in these discussions than necessarily even in my state, because I was contacted by somebody from Canada about some of my writing last month. I'm actually collaborating with somebody from there lately, and a lot of the subscribers that I see on my channel happen to be from there. I'm not sure why, but I'm wondering if maybe due to the lack of real mainstream media or established media variety, people over there are starved for alternative media. What do you guys say? I mean, Arjun, you can chime in too, because I know you follow a lot of Canadian stuff as well.
I think that's safe to say, because we don't really have an established alternative media quite like America does. We got a few for sure. Like there's Press for Truth is one that is probably one of the bigger alternative media that's over here. But all in all, you're kind of relying on individuals on YouTube with their own small followings over here for your alternative media. I can't really say that I can point to a huge alternative media. I mean, you got some like the Post Millennial is another one that I can think of that's sort of the alternative media. But at the same time, they tend to employ a lot of mainstream journalists. Like Barbara Kay she's not a bad journalist. I'm not going to crap on Barbara Kay, but she's one that writes for like a big newspaper over here, the National Post. She's featured a lot in the Post Millennial, things like that. I mean, you got Rebel Media too, but I don't know. Like, I just usually, when I think of the alternative media, I just think of smaller type channels, smaller YouTubers, smaller papers. The Rebel Media is about 1 million right now, but you could consider them the alternative media as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to a time where CBC will become alternative media, right? Because they're everything that the establishment media personifies means like to it. They're the textbook for establishment media. Like they're established with the establishment in a very established manner for an established period of time. So it doesn't get more established. So, but they talk as if they are like the forefront of like all sorts of like the rebellious journalism, that can be like they talk like they're rebel media, but like it's weird. So I'm just like waiting for the time when CBC declares itself to be alternative media.
Boy, that would be the day.
Yeah,
but that
sorry.
would be like NPR becoming the alternative media.
Well, NPR has never been popular here, and in many ways, NPR is sustained. I know you guys. I don't know if it works in Canada the way it works in Britain and in other countries, but NPR isn't just funded by taxes. They have to go on pledge drives and ask people to give them money just to stay in business. NPR and PBS. PBS is the TV arm of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And I'll tell you what, I always have hated NPR. They have one program that's kind of interesting called the Tiny Desk series, where they have like alternative bands come and they play in some douchebag's office, and they're usually pretty good bands, and I think that's the only good thing on NPR. But it kind of says something that commercial radio, you can't really find any real new music. It's all commercial crap. But if you want to look for alternative music, you have to go to either college radio or NPR, which is financed by basically public taxes and begging people for donations.
No, CBC won't ever have to do that because they receive $1 billion from the government a year, so they'll never have to go. Like they still do receive private donations, but they'll never actually have to go begging for it because they have such a large budget for it. And I mean, it doesn't just go towards the news. I mean, they do produce like TV shows and stuff like that, but their television for the most part is just absolute crap. It's like nothing you'd ever really want to watch. So I wouldn't be surprised if most of that actually goes towards their news and their radio channels more than anything else.
Yeah, I think
so. It's a little different from that.
I think it's really hard to understand how like these, like in every country around the world, you have these public media platforms that were formed. I remember in Israel, this might surprise some people, but the Channel 1, which is called the Reshut HaShidur there, which just means the broadcast agency. So you have to pay a tax there. Even like there's a lot of religious people there.
Yep.
So they don't own a TV. So they have, in order to get out of paying the tax for owning a TV, they have to come and give a sworn declaration that they don't own one in their house and have it certified so that they don't get the tax levied on them. And I think in Britain it's even harder because, harder for the general population, because even if you don't own a TV, you still have to pay the BBC TV set tax or whatever they call it. And all around the Western, I don't understand why we need these public companies anymore. Like in Germany, they have ZTE, and in Ireland they have RTE and whatever. So why don't these countries just sell those media conglomerates off, and everybody would be fine? We don't even need anything that NPR produces because, the same thing could be produced privately if people like the product so much, which I don't think that they do. But whatever.
Well, I
No,
do
but if
know
they
that.
do sell it off, then who's going to push the establishment propaganda, right?
The
Like for
commercial
example,
media, you have what? CBS, we have CNN, we have
yeah, but see, yeah, but those guys are driven by profit motivation, right? Like BBC, like it is funded by the government,
uh-huh.
and it is also a corporation, like it is also privately traded. But the fact is, it is mainly funded by the government, and it it gets to keep its ideological thing while being paid for by the British public. So that's like having your cake and eating it too. So why should BBC like change its model now? Why should anybody in the government? What incentive does anybody in the government have to change BBC's like that payment model now? Because it serves everybody's interest as of now. So and on the other hand, like the traditional left-leaning media like the Guardian and all in the UK, they are like losing subscribers and money, and they have to put their stuff. They're on the brink of putting their stuff behind a paywall. So yeah, so things seem to keep working out for BBC. So why should BBC change for that matter?
I have a comment from Larry saying switch to RT. It's Mo Betta plus Caleb Maupin, who I believe is probably one of the new. He's one of the lizard people in my opinion. He's a communist who's on RT. So I do like RT though. So I do agree with Larry. I like RT because I think their production is better than CNN. I don't always agree with their hosts, but I know that it's so.
They're a little anti-America though.
But it's so bizarre, Arjun, that they just don't suck nearly as bad as CNN.
CNN has no incentive to do better. Let's just put it that way.
I know it's like it's pathetic. I don't know
They're
why.
getting money they're getting money for sucking. So like what incentive does a prostitute have to give up turning tricks? Nothing. If she's getting money to suck dick, she will keep sucking dick till she stops getting money for sucking dick.
All right, Adrian,
So
you have to when you go back. I know you're going to download this. Please take a soundbite of what Arjun just said. That's awesome.
I think I can do that. You know what? That's the only part I'll clip out. But that was a good comparison. I like it. Well, it was like, as the saying goes, the prostitutes.
Right? Yeah, that's the Paul Joseph Watson expression. Who made that up though? Was it him?
no, I
I'm
think
not sure.
prostitutes was widely in use in India before Joseph Watson made it famous, right?
Oh, okay.
Because like it's been in use in India since before 2014. So like at that time there was no Paul Joseph Watson on the YouTube. So
So I mean, Larry was saying this as a joke because I think for those of you that don't know, Larry has been watching this channel for a pretty long time. I don't know it's from the beginning, but me and him used to fight in the chat on Lionel Nation's channel because he likes Caleb Maupin, and I think Caleb Maupin needs to be basically assassinated like Damien in The Omen, but non-violently. But yeah, but
I
figuratively.
think he likes Abby Martin too. He likes Abby Martin too.
But she's not on the channel anymore. So so in any case, but the fact is that we both like RT enough, and it used to be like kind of rare that people would watch RT, but because regular media is so awful, it's not as rare as it used to be. Infowars as well. People used to make 4 or 5 years ago when Infowars was a joke, and people were like, "Oh, they're all about the gay frogs and the water filters and the super male vitality pills and whatever." And the Sandy Hook stuff, nobody would watch Infowars. Nowadays, it's almost like if you don't like Infowars is clearly like much more mainstream than it used to be. So these media companies, I think that they're living on a dying host. These older viewers and everything. So do you notice that like either of you did like I think in Arjun has like less of a problem because I think in India they do have a little variety in media. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. But Adrian, I mean, you guys, do you see like more that older viewers are watching CBC and CTV, or is it still like almost everybody does?
Oh no, it's very much the older generations that tend to still watch the corporate media. Like a lot of the polling that they do in America, where it says that the young people aren't watching the corporate news and they're getting most of their news online. It's very similar up here in Canada. It's the exact same thing. But the problem is too is that they have these same hosts all the time. They just switch them around from different segments, or even a lot of times they switch them around from different companies. Like maybe they'll move from CNN to MSNBC or something like that when they're not even trustworthy. I mean, I don't know how Don Lemon still has a show on CNN because he is widely disliked. Like he is significantly disliked from even the people who watch CNN don't really like Don Lemon, but they hang on to these dinosaur hosts as if they actually have contributed something good to the public debate or to the news itself. I mean, it's same thing over here. I've noticed how a few hosts from certain CBC shows have moved around to different shows, but they weren't even widely liked beforehand. Like one in particular I think of is a woman named Rosemary Barton. Nobody really likes Rosemary Barton, but for some reason she's still right now she's actually in probably one of the top news positions, which is CBC's The National. It's one of their top shows, yet she's got moved there and she's been on Power and Politics and a few other stuff. But nobody likes her. A perfect example is because just a couple weeks ago, she had an interview with Justin Trudeau, and you know what her hard-hitting questions were? What type of music do you like? I hear you don't really like to listen to podcasts when you run. Like this is the
Yeah.
sort of thing that they present, and then they act as if there's some sort of great journalist or anchor, but
Who's she
for
talking
some
to?
reason the corporate media hangs on to him. She was talking to the prime minister.
Are you fucking
I'm
kidding
like
me?
surprised she didn't. Yeah, dude, I'm just surprised she didn't just like refer to him as the shiny pony. Because
Like,
remember that was his boxing that was his boxing nickname. Like when he did that charity boxing match, like
yeah.
they called him the shiny pony.
Oh yeah, it was brutal. People were actually people were clipping it and making all sorts of jokes like how this looked like it was a scene out of like The Bachelor or something like this. It was supposed to be a one-on-one hard-hitting interview, but it was fucking awful. But this is the sort of news that they provide, and this is exactly reasons why public broadcasting is such a it's just a crutch for the establishment. They just push exactly what they want because they know if they don't, then they could see their funding cut, which has happened in the past. I mean, with our old prime minister, CBC got cut by 100 million, so they were still receiving $900 million every year. But when he did that, you could literally see from the day after, it's just all the press against him was so negative, it was ridiculous. Like not as bad as Trump got it from the press, because I think he's now gone on record for like the most negative stories and then rather than positive stories or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the data was, but it was very obvious that as soon as he cut the funding, they were in a war against our old conservative prime minister. So this is why public broadcasting these days doesn't make sense. I mean, the reason something like CBC got started was because back in like the 30s or so, when it got started up, maybe a little earlier, it was because at the time there was no real sort of radio station in Canada at the time. So a lot of the stuff was coming from America. So people didn't feel that Canadian interest was being represented. That was the point of starting up I can't remember the name of it before it became CBC. But ever since then, it's pretty much pointless these days. I mean, when you have these companies that could take over the mantle of doing news like that, it's unnecessary.
Yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point, which is that how can we trust NPR to report objectively on politics when a lot of the politicians who especially on the Republican side, they want to cut the funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting here in the U.S., similar to what you're talking about in Canada. And you were talking about how the press also shields certain candidates and gives them puff pieces. This week, I don't know if you guys have heard about this, Arjun, maybe you did, but Beto O'Rourke, who I call
Mm-hmm.
Puto O'Rourke, which you can look that up in Spanish. So he is basically gearing up for a presidential campaign, and people are calling him the White Obama. And all of the
That's bad.
all of the Bernie people are going after him. Is like it's like the media is now doing full on defense for Beto O'Rourke. They're like basically going and I mean, you guys don't watch American football, but they're like the Baltimore Ravens defense, trying to keep Bernie supporters from attacking Beto O'Rourke. And it's like, is that really your job? I don't really, if Bernie supporters want to attack one candidate, who cares? If Trump supporters want to, and I mean, they spend all their time attacking Trump supporters. Then when they're not doing that, when they're trying to take a break, they attack Bernie Sanders for whatever reason. Then, he's basically falling apart emotionally right now. So I don't know why they feel threatened by him. But they have this article here. I don't know if you guys are looking at the screen, but it says Inside Bernie World's War on Beto O'Rourke. And they're just selling him to the country. You have Katie Tur over here basically trying to pitch him to the country. They're all smug. And
what do you think of this, Tiffany? All of these Democrats,
Is it
34
Katie
of them
Tur, that
potentially jumping
reporter
into this
whose
race.
dad
We're getting the
is
first
a
results from
trans
this
person?
very
That's
first
the
Iowa
one.
presidential poll, and Beto O'Rourke coming in
Who
third.
threatened Ben Shapiro on air on live TV?
Yeah, that's exactly the person. That's that's that Katie Tur, the one and only.
God, that was amazing.
Her dad single-handedly set back trans people by at least 30 years.
Yeah, so I'm just tired of people like promoting one candidate over it. I mean, they don't necessarily have to just give equal treatment to all the candidates, in my opinion. I mean, remember in 2016, there were candidates who, like Lindsey Graham, nobody wanted to listen to the guy, so who cares? But the fact is that they're going and they're basically shielding a small group of candidates and attacking one. And that's just the mainstream media. There's also all of those shadowy PACs that were attacking Bernie Sanders back during the 2016 election. And I hate having to kind of white knight for him, because I hate the man, and I hope that he's going to basically, fall through, like, I guess, a sewer grate while he's walking in D.C. or something and be lost forever.
My favorite line you ever used for that was when you said, I just like Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders was drowning, I'd throw him a bottle of water.
But I mean, I've thought of I'm trying to think of other ways that I could express that. There's always the classic, if I wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire. And, if there was a fire ant invasion, I'd shut him up in a honey factory. So, fuck the guy. But this is just bullshit. I don't understand why they have to focus on Bernie Sanders. By giving him negative attention, by the way, they're actually, in many ways, they're keeping his candidacy on life support. Because in reality, a lot of Bernie Sanders' position points back in 2016 have kind of been diluted by the Trump administration. He just passed a crime bill, which is, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some people say good things about it. I'm not totally sure whether it's a good bill or a bad bill. I'm kind of reserving judgment. I'm not an expert on it. But it's definitely something that a lot of people on the progressive side of the aisle, including Van Jones from CNN, they say, well, this is a huge accomplishment for him, and you do have to give him credit. And then there's the pullouts from Syria and Afghanistan. And, I think a number of Bernie Sanders voters are kind of swinging for the administration at the moment if they're not going to get Bernie Sanders in 2020 or kind of a more peace-oriented candidate. They want an anti-war candidate on the left, and they might not get one in the Democratic Party. They might have to run a third-party candidate to do it.
I mean, yeah, no, it's an interesting thought. I think you're probably right on that. I mean, it'd be kind of cool to see if Bernie Sanders did sort of swing around to the Trump side. I get it, though. It's sort of like they, too, want to sort of tear down what they consider is the establishment politics. And Trump does that from the right wing, where Bernie Sanders was at least saying he'd do that from the left wing, although I'm not very confident in what he wants because he would gladly install a socialist regime in America. But I still think there's still that, at least that group of Bernie Sanders supporters who were that would support Trump just because he's doing it, even if it's from a side of politics they don't support.
Yeah, I think I think like Larry is saying, he's in the chat. If Bernie is drowning, release the Kraken. Sherry, by the way, is his lovely wife, and they're home with the grandkids today. So, I'm glad that we've kind of mixed Christmas with F-bombs for them. But in any case, he says he and Cher voted for Bernie in 2016 in the California primaries. Why the fuck not? Look, I mean, you can vote for whoever you want, but I'm going to make fun of them. I'm not making fun of Larry. But if you were in California in 2016, he's right. Why would you vote for, what's his name? What's her name? Hillary Clinton. She's never really caused any. She tried to do the healthcare plan in 1994, I believe. She was parading around the country with her healthcare plan, and it actually got her husband almost voted out of office because the Republicans seized control of Congress in that year's election. And, that's when the impeachment stuff started to crop up under Clinton, and he really had to struggle and fight in order to get reelected in 1996. But she gave up on reforming healthcare at the time. And she gave up not just because, I think the idea is bad, and I'm not going to pretend that I don't. But in her case, she promoted the bad idea in the worst way possible. She was holding meetings, public meetings, as First Lady behind closed doors, which is against federal law. So people were like, well, first of all, you're First Lady. You're not allowed to do this shit. And if you're holding public meetings, they have to be available for public scrutiny. If you're holding meetings concerning public policy, so she got into huge trouble for that. Just like everything she does, she doesn't know how to do anything correct. So why not vote for Bernie in 2016 if you're one of these progressive people?
Well, this is kind of kills me about some of the people that I don't understand from the Black community that have so much support for Hillary Clinton. Like you put out a video earlier today where you were talking about LeBron James, and then you showed the clip of LeBron James at the rally where he was supporting Hillary Clinton. I think also Beyonce and Jay-Z were there. But then there's plenty of evidence that, like, number one, Bill Clinton didn't do much to help out the Black community. In fact, he pushed some bills that actually made it more difficult for their communities. But on top of that, we have the video of Hillary Clinton talking about the super predators, and super predators has actually been one of those terms that was used against Black youth, which a lot of people were saying were racist, a racist thing of her to say. So Hillary Clinton doesn't actually care about the Black community whatsoever. She just wanted their vote. Yet, for some reason, a lot of these people like LeBron James were supporting her.
So I would say the reason that Bill Clinton did so well in the Black community wasn't really because of his policies. It's because Bill Clinton is a person people like, and maybe today it's not as much because he's old and in poor health and doesn't have the same charisma as he used to. But you have to understand that the way people look at Trump today, in terms of his ability to appeal to the common people, Bill Clinton was very good at that. He was a very intelligent guy. He was also a very corrupt guy. But people have to recognize that even if he did pass the Clinton crime bill, I think it was in 1993, in fact. So I would say, I'll look it up, but I think that he passed that bill that mandated harsher sentencing with the Democratic Congress, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. He might have done it when the Republicans took over. But he was really looking to turn the Democrats into a centrist party. They were a very labor-centered organization or movement back in the 80s and 70s. And he was moving it more closer to the center, closer to business interests and everything. And I mean, it's understandable if you're a person on the left, or if you're a member of the black community, that you would say, well, he kind of betrayed us. But he was very good at betraying people and convincing them that he wasn't doing it.
I guess that kind of makes sense. It's just, I don't know. I've always found Bill Clinton to be kind of scummy. And then there's also, like, it's just sort of like the simple things, like how he was on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express. And you can just tell by the way he's conducted himself that he's definitely got an attraction to very young girls. I mean, like, there was the whole Ariana Grande performing at the was it George Bush's funeral?
No, that was at
no.
Aretha Franklin's funeral.
That's what it was, Aretha Franklin's, and just the way he was looking at her. But for me, I've been looking a lot into Jeffrey Epstein and his Lolita Express, and Bill Clinton was on it several times. Although then again, so was Trump, so it just seems to run in the political circles.
So it happens to be that the bill that I'm talking about, the one that enforced higher mandatory minimums, was passed in 1994 before the election that swept the Democrats out of power. So it has, I think that it's a good discussion whether we need harsher sentences or not. I personally don't really see an advantage to it, but I'm not a big crime expert. I talk a little about gun crime on this channel sometimes, but I'm not trying to push myself here as a big policy expert on that. But the fact is that the Democrats did push this through with it was 95-4 in the Senate, and there was a voice vote in the House, which means that almost everybody did vote for it. So yeah, the Democrats, who always talk about how there's the school to prison pipeline and all of that, they pushed this. They pushed this policy of sentencing, felons, repeat felons, to harsher sentences. And by the way, I mean, it's not only black people who are affected by it. There's plenty of white and other racial criminals in America that are they're condemned to prison for life, and maybe plenty of them are probably justifiably thrown in prison for life. But the Democrats want to make it look like the justice system is rigged against minority groups when they helped to do it. And this has nothing, they talk a lot about how the parties switched platforms in the 60s. They try to say the Republicans became racist in the 60s. I'm not a Republican, but I think it's complete bullshit. I think that the Republicans became more evangelical. I think that they embraced a lot of other really strange obsessions, like the abortion debate and all of that, partially because of the Supreme Court. But to say that they became explicitly racist, I think, is a mischaracterization. And some of these issues that happened, like mass incarceration, are literally the Democrats' fault after this alleged shift in attitudes.
Yeah, you have an interesting point there. I watched a video by Dinesh D'Souza a long time back where he said that this entire thing about the big switch is a big lie, right? because the blacks became Democrats in the 30s because of the benefits of the New Deal. Because at that time there was a recession, there was segregation, and when the New Deal came, they switched, and they were unhappy doing that, right? Because they were leaving the party of emancipation and they were going to the party of slavery because of economic benefits. Whereas the Republicans started gaining votes in the South after the South started doing well, and they started becoming less racist. So, like, this entire concept of the big switch, like, is a complete hoax. So, yeah.
Well, I think they kind of have to, considering that the Democrats were the party of slavery and the party of the Ku Klux Klan. They kind of had to play this sleight of hand and switch it. Otherwise, they couldn't appeal to minority vote. I mean, if they sat there and didn't do this, then they couldn't sit there and claim the Republicans are the racist ones, you know?
Yeah, they just have like such a hold on the media over in the Democratic Party that they don't ever get held accountable for it, and that's why I think you do need this breaking up of the political duopoly. And in that sense, you know, you guys might call me an asshole, but I support the Bernie people if they want to do that. If they want to form some party full of, you know, fruitcakes that rub jelly all over their like private parts or whatever, but they're able to get votes and, you know, break up the two-party system, go ahead. You know, I wish we could do that on the right as well. You know, I'm not happy with the Republican Party either. And then we could probably get some breakup of the media stranglehold.
See, the Republican Party is not really in the position where it can really go against Trump right now, because Trump is giving what the people need, right? They want somebody who is anti-establishment and somebody who will shake things up and also go towards the conservative side, because the Republican Party is not willing to do that, wasn't willing to do that, because for whatever reason, for whatever business interest, for whatever, like, the Republican Party was too vanilla to do what needed to be done. But if tomorrow there is a candidate from within the Republican Party who is doing what Trump does, like, I don't mean conduct-wise, I mean policy-wise, like, go left, go right, and go hard right? I mean, in terms of conservative policies, and bring conservatism back, people will vote for that candidate in a heartbeat. It's got nothing to do with the fact that, Republicans are this and Republicans are that. It is just the fact that the Republicans, for whatever reason, are not willing to go that right. But I think Trump is changing that culture within the Republican Party, and I'm sure that there will be somebody who will come up, who will carry on what Trump is doing.
Well, it's because right now there's this idea that you want to appeal to the center, you want to appeal to some of the left, try and steal voters from them. And I think this is a mistake for just right-wing parties in general, because you might attract a little bit of that center, but I find that a lot of people that end up in the center actually tend to support the center-left over anything else. So what you do when you do that is you alienate your right-wing base, which is probably more likely for them to do certain things such as vote for fringe third parties or even just to stay home on voting day. And then at the same time, those who are in the center and those left-wing votes, even if you're trying to appeal them more, at the end of the day, they're going to go and vote for their own party. So if that we're talking about America, they're going to go vote for the Democrats regardless. Where you'll lose some of your support on your right-wing base, maybe they'll go more towards the Libertarian Party or something like that. So it's just a losing strategy. But if you're willing to go towards the right and just say, you know, screw the people on the left, like we're not trying to appeal to you at all, then you'll pretty much get a unified right wing coming out to support you. And I think this is more what Trump has done with this. And a lot of these these right-wing populist candidates that have won across the world, that's what they've gone out and done. The only one I can think so far that has done that and lost, but it was still a close election, was Marine Le Pen in France when she lost to Emmanuel Macron. But that was still a very close election. So it's a losing strategy to try and move a right-wing party more towards the center or try to appeal to the left wing. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in agreement there. But the issue I'm seeing is that we have an American system right now. I don't know if Adrian was just talking about America or Canada, but um, there's an issue here that they've tried to systematize the public school system to such an extent that they're controlling public consensus, and that's really the subject. I'm actually trying to work on a long-term project on that. Similar to the other one we were working on, Adrian. They're trying to kind of build that consensus to become permanent. And, they can't kill individuality in America, but doggone it, they're going after it through Silicon Valley. They're going after it through Wall Street, through K Street. The lobbyists over in Washington, D.C., they're all on K Street. They're going through it using all of those Madison Avenue advertising firms and everything. And I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but the messaging that they put through in a lot of their ads, a lot of these ads, this is bizarre, have interracial couples suddenly. Now, I don't care. Like, technically, my parents were an interracial couple, but it's fucking obvious, guys. And when people want to order a pizza, just put some fat slob sitting there and ordering, some dude that is high on what's it called, on hash oil or something, who's really hungry. That's your target audience. That's your target audience. You can put him any fucking color you want. Even give him a facial rash or something, but that's your target audience.
Well, yeah, but today's millennials are have this attitude which is very reminiscent of the hippies from the 60s, that flower power generation. That's what the Democrat Party has become. They have become the party of hippies, basically.
Well, they always kind of were. But I know exactly what you mean when you talk about this, Bold, when you talked about the whole interracial couple thing. It's like, I'm someone who doesn't really care, but there's just a weird push for it, because one thing I noticed was someone actually pointed it out to me, and I tried it for myself, and it's kind of shocking, is that if you go on Google Images and you type in black couple, you'll find a black couple and maybe some kids. You do the same with Latino and Asian, and that's what'll come up. As soon as you put in white couple, suddenly it'll be a white woman and a black man. It'll be two white people holding a black baby or something like this. But there's just this push when it comes to white people. But then there's not the same push with the other groups of people that are out there. And it's just it's weird for how strongly they're pushing that idea.
See, I let me jump in there for 1 second. Yeah, I kind of understand what's happening, right? There's this concept in India called love jihad, right? There is a concerted effort by Muslim youth to go out and target women of the Hindu and the Christian communities and marry them and convert them to Islam, right? And this is being facilitated by their local mullahs, who are telling these kids to go out and marry girls from other communities to convert them to Islam. So I'm sure if you dig a little deeper into what's happening about the interracial thing, I'm sure it will be white women are being encouraged to go out and marry people or have relationships and children with people from, I'm sure, especially the black community, but also other races, right? Because this is an extension of that white guilt thing, that the way to make reparations is to have white women marry black men or men of other races.
So I want to share this. You guys are going to have to, let me see. I'll send it to you in the Hangouts chat. But this is a commercial that I want to highlight. I was thinking about doing a video about it a few months ago, but it just never seemed like there was a moment that I did it. So they made this video for the NFL and Modelo, which is a brewing company out of Mexico. and it's called Hispanic Football Greats Fighting to Pave the Way for Others. And it's just like the dumbest commercial. So I'm going to play it. It's only 30 seconds. You guys ready?
I'm ready.
1 second. What the fuck? Here we go.
But in a world full of obstacles, football was Anthony's chance to clear his own path. He pushed his way into the record books and became a legend. Anthony
They made this
Munoz cleared
video
the path for others
for the
with names like
NFL and
his,
Modelo,
names like
which
Tony
is a
Gonzalez
brewing company
and
out of
Roberto
Mexico.
Garza. This Hispanic
And
Heritage Month,
it's called-
Modelo celebrates the legends who've proven that it doesn't matter where you come from. It matters what you're made of. Modelo, brewed with a fighting spirit.
Okay, so you guys wouldn't notice anything wrong with that commercial because, you know, you probably are not
Played a
like huge NFL like fans, like because you're not from here. But the three people that they selected, so all three are Mexican. You have Anthony Munoz, who played offensive line in I think it was the 70s and the 80s for Cincinnati. Now he is in the Hall of Fame, but offensive line is not really, with all due respect, it's not a legendary position. You just block people. You just stand there and push the fuck out of the person in front of you. The other guy, Tony Gonzalez, is a huge guy. Let me see if I can find the frame where you see him. Okay, so yeah, he was a pretty good tight end. He was, and I would say he's a legend. And then the third guy, Roberto Garza, nobody would probably remember. I think he played for the Bears for like 20 minutes or something. So they made a commercial about these three guys. It's like, are you just trying to shoehorn ethnic check boxes wherever you can? You know, I like the beer too. I like Tony Gonzalez, but they didn't pave the way for anything. I mean, in the NFL, if you can pretty much abuse your wife and also catch a football, I think you're fine. What do you guys think?
No, I agree with you on that one. It's just yeah, I've kind of noticed that too, that when you're just playing the offensive line, there's really not much to it aside that you have to be big and be able to hold your enemy position in place. So, but yeah, this is just seems to be stereotypical for just about every single industry now, is no matter where you are, what you're doing, you have to shoehorn some form of diversity into it. I mean, it's sort of like there's still this push. Like a good example I have for this isn't even in sports, but there's this push right now for more women and more minorities in the STEM field. But at least when we're talking about women, it's been proven time and time again that when you take away the environmental obstacles, they're less likely to go into STEM, which shows that it's more to do with the fact that they're not interested in going into STEM fields. And it's unnecessary. I mean, most people these days don't care they just don't care who they're dealing with, as long as they can do the job. But for some reason, a lot of these liberal companies, liberal groups, liberal governments, they like to shoehorn diversity in and use the cliches such as diversity is our strength. And it gets annoying for me personally.
Yeah, I think it's like you know, the other problem I'm seeing is that you're combining, you know, this whole Beto O'Rourke bullshit that's going on. He's literally the symbol of, like, he's the American Trudeau, he's the white Obama. You know, it's basically like, put somebody in a trendy outfit like this. You guys can't see the screen, but you know, that's what they think will sell America on the future. And they think that, people, because Trump is kind of ugly, because Trump is also, you know, he says like pretty hilarious like stuff, that he talks shit about women, that people aren't going to vote for him. And they're wrong, because the difference between him and a lot of their candidates is that he's an individual. And Bernie was an individual too. And the other people that ran, they wanted to just fit into the cookie cutter and try to get in, or try to, you know, raise a lot of money. But it doesn't work that way. You know, we had a candidate here Ben Carson, who would have been kind of the diversity candidate on the Republican side, and it became apparent he's a nice person. He has some ideas, but he just doesn't have the it factor in order to win. So I think that they're just trying to squeeze individuality out of everything, ironically by using diversity.
Well, the thing is, too, is if people are going to vote on someone purely on looks, then Hillary Clinton would have won. I'm not saying Hillary Clinton is a good-looking woman. It's more just that she's much better looking than Trump is. So clearly it's not all that there is. I mean, I suppose it plays a factor, but there's more going on behind the scenes than simply because the way someone looks. A lot of it, like, most people care about, especially if you're a political junkie, platform is one of your big one. You want to know what they're going to do for you and for the country. So for a lot of people too, like in America, especially after 8 years under Obama, they want a significant change, and Trump tapped into that, and that's what made him so successful. At least that was made him so successful leading into the presidency. Now, whether he's still considered successful to his base is another question. I've seen lately some people that are starting to get a little fed up with some of the things. Like, I know the wall's a big one, which he's been pushing for lately. But I guess it's more towards the actual Republicans themselves, because they've been kind of cowards getting this wall pushed through. But for most people, it's a lot more than just looks. And again, diversity only goes so far, and in this day and age, people are getting fed up with it, especially when you hear sort of some things like transgender men are starting to compete with women are winning. When you hear like stories like Fallon Fox, the male to female MMA fighter who just beats the crap out of the girls that they fight against, it's just people have reached their breaking point with diversity.
Yeah, that I think, like, the transsexual stuff is really it's the worst part of this all, and I think even people who are very pro diversity are beginning to feel the heat on it, because I was actually talking to somebody who I work with, who is he's not, I wouldn't say he's conservative or liberal, but he's a big yoga freak, and he's I would say he maybe would slant conservative, but he's just not political. So we were talking about the issues of, some of these gyms and stuff, and he's like, at my yoga studio, they actually are having a problem now because they've eliminated male and female changing rooms. They just have one changing room and another one. But if you think about it, the majority of people who go to these yoga classes happen to be women, and one of the big pet peeves of women, from what I hear, I don't do yoga. I actually prefer, I used to do some martial arts, but I just like weight training and cardio. But they hate it when there's dudes there that are basically looking at their asses. So now they have to deal with the possibility of some of these dudes using their dressing room, and them walking in and some dude is like they're full in the buff, because there is no dressing room that's for them. So he said that he thinks that his yoga studio is pretty much going to lose a ton of membership pretty soon, and there's already Planet Fitness, which is here, is losing a lot of members because of that policy. They have a one bathroom policy. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. It's definitely become a huge problem.
I heard a story similar to that recently, which was about a transgender woman, so man to woman, who ended up coming. It's very similar. Went into a gym and then demanded to use the women's changing room. And the staff weren't going to allow him to do it. But when they got threatened with a lawsuit, then that ended up getting changed. So, but then exactly that was that when a lot of the biological women that were there, they didn't want to share their dressing room with someone with a dick. So they actually started canceling their membership. So the gym itself was caught between a rock and a hard place, because if they denied this transgender woman, then they were going to get sued. But if they allowed it, all the women are going to cancel their memberships. And the thing is, too, is if you don't have women going to your gym, chances are you're not going to have a lot of men sign up. So I heard a very similar story.
So
just 1 second here. Like one question, like if the feminists say that men are so bad, does that include transgender people who have transitioned from women to men? Like, are they now horrible people? They used to be good people and are now horrible people. Like, and the second part is this whole thing about common bathrooms and common changing rooms. This is atrocious, and people will feel the effects of it very soon. Especially business owners who will lose a ton of business. It's going to happen.
Well, to answer your question there, Arjun, yes, they are a problem if they transition, because I remember it might have been a year or more ago, I was watching the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about one story from a university campus, which was a woman who was running for, I think it was student council president, and they were just about to start their transition into becoming a man. So at first, the students supported her, because they were transgender, and then they were, part of the oppressed group. But then ended up voting against him because he was transitioned to a man, and he was now part of the patriarchy and so part of the problem of society. So to answer your question, yes.
So
isn't that a catch-22?
One of the people in the chat was talking about Ocasio-Cortez possibly as Beto's running mate, and I think that it would help a lot with one of the best hobbies that's going around, which is the Ocasio meme. So you have this one, which is, can you guys see what I'm putting up? I think you guys would have to look at the screen, but you have her face here. She's saying, "Yes, we can land in the sun. We just have to go at night." And and then there's what the fuck? There's another one where she says, "I hope I never have twins. I can't afford to be pregnant for 18 months." Now the one that I can't find, which I thought was like, it was so edgy and spicy. I didn't share it, but it was, "I don't do doggy style because I don't want to be pregnant with puppies." So there's so many of these. It's like great.
I think she will single-handedly replace dumb blonde jokes.
Here's one that says, "We can end world hunger with these donut seeds," and she's holding a bag of Cheerios.
Well, I mean, she's done it to herself, I mean, I know these are probably we all know that this ended up happening, but if you're going to say you need to take back the three chambers of government, the three houses of government, the Congress, the Senate, and the presidency, then you're kind of a dumbass. The three judicial branches, that was the word I was looking for. The three branches of government.
She says three chambers of government, which is it's pretty funny. It is. It actually is three branches, but she said it was Congress. No, she said it was the House, the Senate, and the presidency.
Yeah. Which, again, it's not like she was underneath she was in the middle of an interview and could have stumbled up on her words. This was her own video that she recorded and then uploaded. And I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but it's one thing if you do like a long video, like if you do an hour long, I won't necessarily go back and rewatch it. But if I record something that's only a minute or two long, I will go back and listen to it just very quickly before I upload it. So my guess is she ended up doing this, hearing her words, and then uploading it anyway. So she's done this to herself.
Yeah, she's a gift to mankind. Like at least for the right wing, she's a gift to mankind. Like she single-handedly, like if I were Trump, I would definitely want her running against me, because that would ensure my victory in the coming election. Like if Ocasio-Cortez continues to represent the Democratic Party, that is going to be so beneficial for the Republican Party. It is like it's not even a joke. Like it's like letting a mentally handicapped child run for office. It's as criminal as that. So yeah.
Well, you know what they're going to do, though, right? The same thing that they did during the Kavanaugh hearings, which is when she starts to become too ridiculous for them, they're going to say that she's a Republican plant in order to make them look bad.
It very well could be. Oh God, she's like terrible. But like, yeah, but they seem to be getting behind Cortez, like regardless whether she makes dumb statements or not, the Democratic Party seems to be throwing in their lot with her. Like they seem to think that she's their like Lord and Savior, like that the second, like the second she's like the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Well, the problem is they don't have any other candidate that can really capture the youth vote. Now they do have Beto. Beto, I guess, supposedly could be a good youth candidate, but there's a problem for them that even if they have, for example, somebody like Beto or Rourke, the guy is not in office, and she is. And on certain votes, they might need her vote, and they can pretty much they've already gotten her to basically bend knee and suck Pelosi's cock like 4 or 5 times already. First of all, there was the very fact that she supported Pelosi for speaker was a huge letdown for a lot of the progressive supporters who got her nominated in the first place. So it's like ridiculous. There's no way for people to continue to change the party from within without addressing Cortez. And the Democratic establishment, they want to keep their own hold on power, and therefore they're trying to use her and corrupt her and make her one of their, as Alex Jones would say, one of their goblins. So
she looks like a goblin.
Yeah, people. I mean, when she started out, people were like, "Yeah, this girl's pretty hot," but then like people started finding like frames of videos.
Then she opened her mouth.
Yeah, like exactly. And people started to like basically make memes of her looking like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and it's been like a runaway train since then. And she just can't. I think there's still a lot of people who like her, but there's more people out there who think that she's a joke. So, it's a strange situation.
See, not that Beto O'Rourke is any better, right? Because the Republicans keep calling him Beta O'Rourke, and they made him out to be some kind of cucklord. So I don't think Beto O'Rourke has much of a political future ahead of him, especially if he wants to run for president. Yeah, I don't think. Because Trump in a debate would destroy him. Like the name calling would go to a whole new level, and that would just destroy any chance he has at a political future. Same with Ocasio-Cortez. This going to be. It's not even fair to them to have them run in that race. It's like sending in 10-year-old boys to fight a war. It's like they are going to get murdered. It's not even fair. So yeah, I don't. If these two guys are the new hope for the Democratic Party, then I would say it's already game over. There's nothing left. And I'm not surprised that Hillary Clinton is not she's not she's not really out there saying that she's not going to run for another shot at the presidency, because she also understands that if she doesn't run, probably these guys would try and run, and that would destroy the Democratic Party's chances for the coming decades.
So, Adrian, I don't know if you have an opinion on that. I can go after you, but I think I have an idea of why she would probably still try to run in 2020.
Not really when it comes to Hillary Clinton rerunning. It's just that I think that she just always felt that it's almost her birthright to have the presidency, because, her husband was the president. She was first lady. This would be her third time running and third time losing. But that's really all I can think, is that she feels like she has a right to do so. Other than that, then a lot of the political donors would like to see Hillary Clinton get elected because it would benefit them. Political donors and, international, a lot of people involved in the international stage probably would enjoy having Hillary Clinton as the president. What I was going to say, though, is even though somebody like Ocasio-Cortez sort of supported Nancy Pelosi for speaker, I think she's going to do more harm than good to the Democrats, because we've already seen how as soon as she was coming into Congress, she immediately went to war with a lot of the Democrats that were there. So I think it's actually going to do more of a job of splitting the Democrats up, because you got the sort of the liberal Democrats versus these new socialist Democrats that are coming in, such as her. So I think it's going to. I think I agree with Arjun that it's going to cause more damage toward the Democrats than actually good by getting people like this elected on their side. But that's all really I had to add on that.
No, and one more thing is that there's a guy in the chat called sfresh666. He makes a good point about they need Tulsi Gabbard, right? Tulsi Gabbard is a good candidate. She's a very balanced candidate and is a good face for the Democratic Party. But unfortunately, she threw in a lot with Bernie Sanders, and now she is basically persona non grata at the DSC. So and she's a war veteran, and she's also, she used to be, and she's also a representative from Hawaii, I think. So she has good relationships with politicians from all over the world. I think she would be a good choice for the Democratic Party if they needed a candidate as such, but I don't see that happening. So it would do well she would do well to probably join the Republicans.
So I would say I don't think that she would really fit in the Republican Party, but she could definitely run as the Green Party candidate and win a lot of support. But the fact is that I was going to give my theory about why Clinton would continue to run, and that's the fact that even if she were to lose in 2020, if with the huge field of candidates, there's going to be a kind of a split in delegates, and if she can get a major wedge, like let's say she were to be in second or third place, and at the convention nobody had a majority, like in 2008, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton split all of the states that were won, and the only other person who could garner any delegates, I believe, was John Edwards, who was a huge failure. But if the vote can be split by enough of a margin between 3 or 4 candidates, then she could end up coming out of the convention as the consensus candidate, because two of the other candidates would have to get behind somebody or something. Or if she can't come out as the consensus candidate, she can broker her candidates in order to get the vice presidency or some other cabinet position, and that would also be kind of a nightmare for the Democratic Party, in my opinion. Or if they, let's say if they run a candidate who wins who kind of comes out on top, and like I said, she has to broker her way in, so she could ride the coattails of somebody much more successful, let's say, for argument's sake, Beto O'Rourke, or what's the other guy's name? Michael Bloomberg, let's say. I don't think he's going to run, but and she would be the vice presidential candidate, and they could raise a ton more money, and also they could pretty much get all the neocons to hop on using her name recognition.
Yeah, Michael Bloomberg he was the former mayor of New York, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he seems to be an okay candidate, but I don't think he has much of a chance anymore, because he seems more, because he's a businessman, he's a billionaire, he owns the big Bloomberg Media Group, I think, and yeah, I don't think he's got a chance because he's too establishment. and the Democrats on the platform that they're running in that crazy far left sort of frothing at the mouth platform. I don't think he's a good fit on that stage.
It'll be tough to say because Michael Bloomberg, as a rich guy, he was also, I think, the third biggest contributor to the Democrats in the midterm elections. So I think he would actually buy his way in more than anything else. And because that's the big thing in American politics is how much money do you have? Well, politics in general, but especially in America, is how much money do you have? So I think he'd be able to pretty much buy his way into the leadership.
Yeah, I think he has $100 billion that he could use.
Something like that.
Well, yeah, but would he fit on that stage? See, the only hope right now that the Democratic Party has is if George Soros turned around and said that he wanted to run for president. That's I think the only hope that they have.
Yeah, but Soros wouldn't do that though. He's trying to stay more on the outsides of politics.
That just tells you about the chances that the Democratic Party has, right? It's like a snowball's chance in hell. Larry Gerke says Bono 2020. I agree.
Yeah, I was looking at that too. That's pretty funny. That's why we keep Larry. You know, Larry should probably be. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten a job as like a producer or not producer, but like a writer for like late night or something.
Yeah, but I can't tell whether Larry Gerke is like center right or center left. He keeps like commenting, but then he says a certain center left thing which confuses me. I can never tell whether he's center left or center right.
I'm arguing with these morons here about the fucking, this Syria pullout, and I'm like about tired of it. It's like ridiculous. You know, these people are like
pull out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm ready to pull out and call the abortion doctor on them.
Bold, when was the last time you pulled out? Oh man.
Well, for me, what I find funniest about the Syria pullout was that, I know, Arjun, laugh it out, but about troops withdrawing from Syria was, did you see the two side-by-sides of I think it was the New York Times, one day apart? It was like, on one side, it was like the day before. It was like January 19th, I think it was. Anyway, the day before, they're talking about how like the troops in Syria aren't it's just putting your troops in danger. We really shouldn't have them in there. And then the very next day, when Trump announced that they're pulling out, they pretty much said how pulling out the troops in Syria are leaving like leaving the Kurds over there high and dry and like going to allow the return of ISIS, and that pretty much two very opposing points of view, one day apart on that, just as soon as Trump announced that he was pulling out.
Trump pulling out. That's an image.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that. But anyway, go ahead.
What, Trump pulling out? You actually might.
Yeah, there's the one thing that I'll say that I don't like about what Trump is doing in regards to Syria is that he's apparently cementing some sort of partnership with Erdogan over in Turkey, and that's not like I envisioned him taking U.S. troops out of Syria, but not in the same way that he's doing right now. I thought that the best course for doing it would be to broker a summit with Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey and Russia, and say, we'll all do phased withdrawals. And this has actually been done. People might say, oh, you're full of shit. That would have never happened. It's been done in other countries. That's what happened with ending basically the Angolan War. For those of you that don't know, there used to be South African and Cuban troops involved in the Angolan Civil War, and they had to do a phased withdrawal at the end of the 80s because Cuba was kind of, they were pouring a lot of money into it, and so was South Africa. And, they brokered a successful end to both interventions. So people say, well, you can't do that. Nobody's going to talk to each other. I mean, look at what's happening this year just with Korea.
Which Korea?
Both of them.
Yeah, so see, the thing about Turkey is in a desperate situation right now because Turkey is on the outside of the mainstream right now because they have no support worldwide. Turkey is also facing a currency collapse and a banking system collapse like Venezuela, right? Because of Erdogan's stupid economic policies. And also with Erdogan's push for this Islamism in his country and returning Turkey to what it was before it was a secular democratic country, and undoing all the work of Kemal Ataturk, like Erdogan has lost most of his friends, right? Not even the Arab countries want to touch it. So in this case, and his relationship with Russia is going down and down, especially after the assassination of 2 Russian diplomats in Turkey. So the thing is that right now Turkey needed a lifesaver, right? And that came in the form of that Jamal Khashoggi killing. And Turkey immediately took a stand against Saudi Arabia and got in good with Trump. And they are using that as their meal ticket to sort of get back into the good graces of the world. So that's the thing about Turkey. So Turkey is in a very weird position right now. So and Trump is probably looking at them to sort of be their lackey in that area. Because Turkey is right now willing to do anything. If Trump wants a back alley reach around, then Turkey is going to do that for him, with a smile on their face.
All right. I don't know. I'm kind of arguing with somebody else here who's giving this psychological analysis of Donald Trump. She was saying that he has some sort of personality disorder, and she says that as a psychologist, but there's actually a code of ethics. I guess it's the Goldwater rule. So, and I'm gonna bring it up because this woman, I'm tired of these fucking middle class housewives and retired assholes who, they're like, he must have some sort of personality disorder. And, he's ruining the country and he's destroying our democratic institutions. Fuck you! I mean, what did you do to build the democratic institutions? I mean, you elected President Bush. These are the same people that elected the Bushes and the Clintons and everything. And they're acting like this is the worst point in our history without acknowledging that they got us to this point. Anyone?
Yeah, Hannah Jane Parkinson looks like the whitest lady ever.
Yeah, man.
Well, it's reasons like this that the boomers get blamed for giving us in the position that we are in right now. It's because of who they appointed into office. Now, we'll probably face something similar once we get into middle age or so, depending on who we elect now. But it's exactly this. The policies that get pushed by these sort of politicians is a lot of the reasons that America has been in a cycle of perpetual war. How you now have the debt that you have. You now have the social strife that you have now. This is exactly why the boomers get blamed for it.
All right, so I guess we're kind of winding down here.
Yeah.
So Larry brings up the Hmong Montagnards of Vietnam, who kind of were screwed over by our withdrawal from there. Yeah, that is a problem. We shouldn't pretend that it's not an issue here. But the fact of the matter is that I don't think that people wanted us to be involved in Syria in order to protect the Kurds anyway. They want us there in order to spread American. What are you guys arguing about dicks there? Oh, I see. Yeah, it's kind of. Yeah, that's you guys are kind of over focused there. In any case, yeah, I don't think we're in Syria in order to protect the Kurds. It's kind of a sideshow, and I think that the fact is that we've been involved in Iraq for all these years. We didn't force Iraq to give the Kurds independence. We're not forcing Turkey to give the Kurds independence, and they've been our allies since like the 40s. So I think that it's all. Something has to change. I don't think Trump is doing like everything 100% right. I think that there's definitely problems with the way that he's pulling out of Syria, to use Arjun's favorite phrase. But these people are pretending now that we were in the conflict the whole time in order to help the Kurds. It's just not true. And I'll tell you what. If we wouldn't have been involved in Iraq, if we wouldn't have been involved in a lot of these wars all the way back to the 70s, maybe something would have developed better along the way for the Kurds. But there's no way to know. But in my opinion, we have to stop this behavior where we're always getting involved in all these corners of the world. So, Arjun, why don't you give us your last word, and then we'll go for Adrian.
See, my take on Syria has always been the fact that the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad, he's a secular guy, right? Even though he belongs to a sectarian government, the fact is he's a secular guy. He was an ophthalmologist in the UK. His wife is a well-educated woman. I think she's also a doctor. But and they have never been like religious zealots. The whole thing about Syria was that Saudi Arabia wanted a pipeline there. He refused because he can't stand Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia started funding the ISIS people in Syria, and they were dubbed as the rebels who are rebelling against an oppressive government by international media. So, and that led to a destruction of a country which is extremely sad. And this whole thing about like whether to stay or not in Syria, whether to like withdraw troops from there, it is it's a mess. It's a tragedy which the world is looking away from. Like people are averting their eyes because it is convenient. So, like, and it's extremely immoral to sort of to continue the war in Syria and to continue to defame the Syrian president because it is absolutely not true. But then what, you won't expect any better from Arabs and leftists.
All right, so Adrian, your turn.
Well, I do approve of Trump pulling out of Syria because it's not necessary for you to put your own troops in harm's way for another country. I find that I like Arjun's analysis that he took on it about between the rebels and everything. I mean, we can't forget that also underneath Obama there were several, I'll put quote unquote accidental weapon drops into ISIS territory that was claimed by them. So I think it's good. It's a good move to make. It seems like a lot of America's wars throughout history, at least I would say maybe ever since the Second World War, has been wars for influence. I mean, that could be whether it has to do going against capitalism versus communism, like we saw in the proxy wars during the Cold War, or maybe these days it has a lot more to do with oil. But I think these wars for influence need to stop, and that this is at least the right move that Trump is making in order to pulling the troops back from Syria. Although a lot of the people in the media will still criticize him regardless for this, because there's never been a war that they haven't liked.
All right, so that's about it. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, and I guess tomorrow, is Boxing Day or something.
Yep.
So happy Boxing Day, which I have no clue what you guys do, but thanks for tuning in, and always remember the great. We're gonna have this play out again. The Hispanic football greats that paved the way for others. Say goodbye, Arjun. And
bye, guys. Merry Christmas to you all, especially to you, Bold.
Thank you. Although I don't celebrate Christmas.
I know.
All right.
Thanks for having us on, Bold. Another great combo.
And Merry Christmas to all the guys in the chat.
Yeah, well, I'll name I'll tell you their names while we're watching this great commercial for Modelo beer.
Where he grew up, not many kids with names like Munoz played American football.
So Hispanic legend S. Fresh 666.
But in a world full of obstacles,
and Arjun Sinha, another Hispanic legend, and another Hispanic legend, Chris Kral, and Larry Gerke.
Anthony Munoz cleared a path for others,
and also very Hispanic legend. And
this Hispanic Heritage Month, Modelo celebrates
the most Hispanic of them all, Adrian Lloyd.
Yeah, Nick's
Damn
Radio.
right.
Yeah.
Modelo. Brewed.
Yeah, Adrian's a muy Hispanic legend there. So that's about it. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys later. Good night.
All right.
Have a good one, Bold.
Bye.
Bye-bye.